But first, let's talk about what you were just talking about. Let's talk about this past weekend and the conference championships and the CFP committee's decision to put Bama in over Florida State. A lot of hoopla has been made about that decision. I kind of had a feeling that something like that was coming because of some of Bill Hancock's comments that he made the week before, saying that the committee is to put the best 4 teams in college football into the playoff. And I worried about that because whenever you get some guy in a room with a committee saying that we're going to put the best 4 teams, there's no way in college football to prove who's the best 4 teams. That's not how this works, and that's not what us college football fans are accustomed to after hundreds of years of this sport. So I kind of want to dig into that, obviously, and we're going to talk about, I guess, briefly some of these conference championship games that just happened this weekend and what we saw in these games and just some of the few things that we can take away. We thank you all so much for tuning in. If you're tuned in right now live, we do appreciate that. Drop your comments in the comment section, and we'll read those throughout the show. We're going to do that on all our live shows. So we invite you to leave a comment and let us know what you're thinking and what you'd like to talk about. We definitely want to hear it. And if you're new to the First and Long College Football Show, welcome. We're building a college football community with you in mind. It's for the people, by the people. We're just a couple of fans. So come and join your brethren in fanhood, right? Hit the subscribe button. Join the First and Long College Football Show community. We'd love to have you. So let's kind of jump into some of this stuff that we teased here at the top of the show. CFP Final Four. There is absolutely no way to draw this up that Florida State wasn't screwed in this situation, Mason. Mm-hmm. I mean, this was a screw job for Florida State. I don't care about what conference they're in. They're in a Power 5 conference, a conference that is guaranteed a top seeded bid in next year's playoff.
Yeah.
So the outlook isn't changing for the ACC anytime soon. This team goes 13-0 and doesn't make the college football playoff. It's absolutely preposterous. And if I was a Florida State fan, I would be absolutely livid. What say you?
I completely agree with you. I think it's preposterous. We've been saying, and look, here's the best way that the best sort of analogy, I guess, that I can draw. And I heard it from someone else, but if you were to do a jersey swap in this year's college football top 4, and you took Georgia and you swapped Georgia with Alabama, right? And you put the Georgia team, you give them the same record against the same opponents that Alabama faced, Georgia's not getting in. Do you agree with that, Mark?
Yeah, I definitely agree, 100%.
So, and then same way, the same way for the ACC. If you were to swap Clemson and Florida State's jerseys, you give Clemson the same record that against the same teams that Florida State just faced, and their starting quarterback goes out, Clemson's still getting in. Because we've seen it.
Yeah.
We've seen that happen. We saw Ohio State do it, and they won the national championship, with their third-string quarterback. So don't tell me you're just going to change it up all of a sudden because an SEC team can't get in. I think that's ridiculous, and I'm a fan of an SEC team. So, I'm not saying that an ACC fan or an old fan. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Why even play the games if yeah, and I know people keep having the same argument. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it just makes you really discouraged and make you feel like the games don't really matter. And then there was just so much screwy stuff going on. If that's the case, why is Washington in over Georgia? Because nobody's saying that Washington is a better, more complete team than Georgia. Everybody that I've heard is still arguing that Georgia's the best team in the country, whether they won or lost against Alabama. So make that make sense.
Yeah. Well, this is the only sport of all sports that is this way, where you start the year and you have no idea what it's going to take to make it to a playoff or win a national championship. The goalpost can be moved on you at any moment. And that, I think, it makes college football very interesting, but in the same vein, it makes it makes you almost not want to watch a little bit. I mean, it gives you a sour stomach towards it. I know if you're a Florida State fan, you're thinking, well, I mean, what the hell do we got to do here? Um, my biggest beef is how does a group of people, a room of people, know exactly what an injured player is worth to a team? You can't know that. What if they said that about Ohio State? I guess Ohio State in 2014 needs to give their national championship back
Yeah.
because they were in the same boat. They had a third string quarterback who took over the team and led them to a national championship. So I'm not saying Brock Glenn could have done that for Florida State. Okay.
It wouldn't have been
I'm
him
going to
though
change up
either.
gears just a little bit.
It would have been Rodemaker though, with an extra
Yeah.
30 days of practice.
Right.
I like what I saw the second half against Florida from Rodemaker. You know, I don't, and I like their defense. I don't think it's inconceivable that they could have
Well,
beat
their defense has
Michigan.
played amazing to end the year.
Yeah. Yeah, and they have more weapons than Michigan. They have more better skill players than Michigan on both sides of the ball. I'm not convinced that they wouldn't have won that game.
Yeah. Yeah. And now we're never going to know. And it's really a shame. And I don't want it's not just that it's Florida State. I'm not a Florida State fan. As you can see behind me, I'm a UGA fan. Okay. Georgia didn't make the playoff, and they didn't deserve to make the playoff because Georgia had a playoff game, and it was against Alabama, and they lost. And that's the way I look at that. And it is what it is. There was bad calls. There was injured players. That's every single football game. But none of that stuff applies to this Florida State situation. None of that applies. Florida State didn't lose a football game this year, guys. And now we're leaving it to people to decide that a team that never lost a football game is not going to get a chance to play for a national championship, and that I think is pretty devastating to the sport. And I think the College Football Playoff Committee was just kind of like, hey, you know what? This is the last 4-team playoff. Whatever, we'll just do what we want to do in this one, and we'll hear about it for a couple weeks and everybody will move on. Some other news will break. The transfer portal news will break and everybody will stop talking about it. And that's really, really a shame. But to build on what we've said a little bit, was Florida State one of the best 4 teams in the country? I don't think so. I don't think they're one of the best 4 teams in the country, but I can't tell you that definitively. That is our whole point here. Now, do I think Florida State would have beat Georgia in a situation in a playoff game? Hell no. I don't. I don't think that. But I don't know that. And they don't either. They don't know anything that we don't. They're looking at the same set of facts that we are, and that's why it's surprising to me that there is this much separation between what is actually going to happen and what everybody feels like should have happened. Definitely has got everybody talking. And let's talk about this other matchup that we've got going on. So Washington pulls this thing out, okay, against Oregon. Nobody predicted it, okay? Nobody predicted it because if you looked on paper, Oregon was a better team than Washington. That is the set of facts. But these games are not played on paper, are they? They are played on the field. And Washington looked like one of the best teams in the country again all of a sudden. They look like early season Washington to me. And they had a lot of players getting healthy on that defense. And it looked like it made a big difference to me. But the biggest difference in that game was the fact that Washington effectively ran the football against Oregon. And so Oregon was on their heels, man. They didn't know what was coming. And I just thought it was an amazing plan by Kalen DeBoer. I was one of the very few that bet on Washington plus the points. I did it on the Between the Lines show. Nobody watched that show. Everybody watched our prediction. 10,000 of you watched the prediction show.
Well, a lot of people
45 of you what?
A lot of people read the title and then they commented based off of the title. Didn't even watch the show.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And but 50 of y'all watched our betting show that we do every week during the season. And I actually bet and won money on Washington plus the points. And really, it was just a fade bet. It was fade the public. Let's be honest. That's what it was. Too many people on Oregon. They don't build big, huge buildings in Vegas by losing bets on whenever 70% of the money's coming in on one team. They're not going to lose in that situation, and it's really wild how it works out in their favor, man. It seems like
Yeah.
it always does. What did you think about the Pac-12 championship? I thought it was one of the best games of the weekend. What did you think?
Yeah, it definitely was, and it was nice to pour myself a glass of bourbon and have to focus on just one game. I didn't have it on split screen. I wasn't checking my phone and checking scores. It was the primetime game, and I really loved every minute of it. It was a very fun game, and I was on Oregon in the points like the rest of America. I don't know why I do that because I see everybody else picking, and I know not to pick with the public, and I still did it anyways. But as soon as I saw the broadcast and as soon as I saw the pregame and the energy, I started realizing this is going to be a game. There is no way that Oregon is going to cover 9.5 points. The best thing that I've got going for me is the under hitting, and it did by half a point. So I was happy. I was happy on that one. But I agree with you. I think that Kalen DeBoer outcoached Dan Lanning, and I think that Dan Lanning is still kind of going through growing pains. And Kalen DeBoer is a very good, very underrated head coach. Go look at his record. He's won what, like 93% of his games. I mean, the guy is a freaking
He's lost
machine.
2 games since he's been there.
Right. But and overall, but like and he's doing it against in the Pac-12 against teams like Oregon and USC that recruit better than Washington does. So I don't know. I think he's an outstanding coach. Finds ways to win. Some people are comparing them to TCU this year. They are much better than TCU was last year across the
Hell
board.
yeah.
They are way better. I agree in a sense when you look at their schedule and their record and how they've won games that were close. Yeah, I see that, but this is a really good Washington team, and I think that they kind of showed up at the right moment. We could see their running game kind of crescendoing up, to this game here against Oregon, and they had probably one of their best, rushing games against Oregon, considering who they were playing against and how well Oregon had been playing the run all season long. That was the most impressive part of that game was seeing them in their rushing attack. And they just out physicaled the Ducks. And I did see their defensive tackle in the middle, the transfer from South Carolina, and I'm blanking on his name right now.
Jordan
Um,
Birch.
Jordan Birch went out early, and I think that really hurt
Mhm.
Oregon. Had he been in, would it have made that much of a difference? I'm not sure because he's got a pretty good replacement, and I was just surprised, that the running game got going like it did. Once it was going, I realized that that Oregon would need a little bit of luck to win this one. I thought that there was a lot of pressure on Bo Nix in this game as well. This is his Heisman moment. He has a chance to go out there, not just win the game, but win the Heisman. And I could see it. I could see him kind of jittery, kind of agitated on the field, and very antsy. And that it kind of reflected in his play to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought the interior offensive line played really, really good for Washington in this game. I mean, that I think that we finally saw what this weakness is for this Ducks defense, and one of the weaknesses I think is the interior of that defensive line. Jordan, they got Birch playing, like kind of like an edge rusher or whatnot. They don't have a big run stopper. I think Oregon's deficiency and Georgia's deficiency was is kind of similar. There is no Jordan Davis or Jalen Carter or anything like that right in the middle of this defense to absorb some of those blocks.
Yeah.
Um, I once we saw them against a team that had their ducks in a row, no pun intended, like Washington did this past Saturday. I mean, or excuse me, this past Friday. That it was a little too much to handle. And I agree with you, Bo Nix. This wasn't his best performance for sure. I mean, there's no doubt about that. He looked a bit jittery. I was worried whenever Oregon clinched against Oregon State. They did the post game interview and they asked Nix that what he thought about playing for a collegiate championship. And he said, "Oh, I've never done this before. This is a really big deal for me." not what I really wanted to hear. I would like to hear maybe from the quarterback that it's it's just another game,
Yeah, usually the
or
line you go
this
to.
is just one more stepping stone on our path to our ultimate goal. So I didn't like that. I didn't like that, and we kind of saw a little bit of the old Bo Nix there in his 61st or 62nd start there of the year. And now Oregon's going to get to play Liberty, and we're going to go over the bowl games here in a few minutes. So good luck with the Flames. Now I don't think they're going to have their quarterback, so that'll be interesting. We kind of glassed over something, and I just want to kind of I want to touch on it in that Georgia-Alabama game, that SEC championship game. I thought it was a really good performance by Alabama's defense. I thought they played a really good game. I thought Georgia's defense played really well. Honestly, I mean, apart from a couple of really good drives by Alabama, I mean, I thought Georgia's defense played really well. Georgia's offense had a really bad day. They had a really bad day. They had some a really key turnover in their own red zone where the defense held the other team to 3, unbelievably. But the offense just couldn't get out of their own way, Mason. I mean, turning the ball over, taking 3 negative plays in a row before trying to kick a field goal, making it 4th and 23 instead of, 4th and 10 like it, should have been. I mean, let's just be real, or maybe even 4th and 13, but you get that penalty before the kicker comes out there and just backs them up even further into career long area, for a freshman kicker. Really, really changed the game, man. I mean, there's a 6-point swing on a couple plays, and that's not to mention some calls that I know Georgia fans would like to would have liked to have been called in that situation. But congratulations to Alabama. I mean, they won that football game, and they deserve to go on, to do whatever they do. I don't know if they deserve to go to the playoff, but they're going to get a chance nonetheless. It doesn't matter what I think. Any last thought on the SEC championship in Georgia and Bama?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I thought it was a good game by the defense. I thought that the offense let the defense down. And by that, I mean, the offense went out and drove down the field that first drive, right? After the defense already got a stop, and you're thinking, holy cow, Georgia's about to score 40 on Bama. This looks way too easy. And then defense gets another stop and you feel even more confident. And then the offense goes 3 and out, 3 and out. And after that, the defense looked gassed. Well, I wouldn't say immediately after that, but as the game kind of went on, you could tell that the defense was getting gassed. And, even on that last drive, they couldn't stop them. And they ended up getting a first down, and that was it, But I thought that overall, Nick Saban and his coaching staff had a better coaching performance than Kirby Smart and his coaching staff. And I thought that really the matchup that won Alabama the game was in the trenches on both sides of the football. Their offensive line showed up. They did give up 4 sacks, but they showed up and moved our defensive line around. And they were pretty, I wouldn't say they were able to do what they wanted to, but they did enough to win the game. And on the edges, our tackles, Amarius Mim goes out, and our tackles were not able to hold up. So I think it was Braswell and 15. I'm not good with names, but Turner. They were both able to kind of come off the ends and get to the quarterback and create pressure once Mims went out, and it really affected the run game as well. But ultimately, the one play that I go back to is the Isaiah Bond catch that wasn't probably a catch. I get it if the refs didn't see it on the field and they thought it was a catch, so be it. The refs didn't go and review it. Okay, Kirby's got to call a timeout right there. And I don't put it just on Kirby. I think that if you go back and watch his press conference after the game, he didn't even know that it was a questionable call. So his coaching staff didn't even call down to his headset and say, hey, we got to call a timeout, review this. That's a coaching error. For as much credit as we gave Kirby in the Ohio State game last year for calling the timeout on the fake punt, we've also got to be a little bit critical here and say, you got to call a timeout right there. Where's your coaching staff? Where's your help in the booth? But credit to Alabama and their team. I thought it was a great job, really all season for Nick Saban, considering where they were in week 2 or 3. I thought this was a huge turnaround for the Tide, and the tide turned, so to speak. But I thought it was a great coaching job by them, and they deserve a lot of credit. Nick Saban's not done yet. He still had another one in his tank at least. And I don't think that much has changed in the college football landscape at the end of the day.
Yeah. We're going to get into our our college football playoff predictions. Obviously, we're going to break that down here probably coming up in a week or so. But I think Georgia played a really bad game, man.
Yeah.
I don't know how great of a game Alabama played. I still have the same questions about Jalen Milroe that I had going into the game. This guy is not a talented thrower of the football, man.
Mm-mm.
I know he can throw a deep ball, and I get it. It's pretty and all, but that doesn't matter.
All he did was protect the ball better than Georgia's offense did. We had the one fumble, and that was a huge swing, even though it was only 3 points.
Now, the offensive line, you spoke on it. That was their best performance of the year.
Yeah.
There is zero doubt about that in my mind. I've watched this team all year. That offensive line was getting a push unlike anything I've seen this year. There's no doubt about that. They gave up sacks like they normally do. They give up sacks every game.
Mm-hmm.
They've given up over about 45 sacks this year. That's just their football team. But the way they hit the edges against Georgia and they exposed that weakness, I thought was a really, really good game plan. I really do. And defensively, Alabama, I thought they did a good job getting behind the line of scrimmage. They created some negative plays whenever it really meant a lot. Georgia had more total yards in the game than Alabama did.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, neither one of them had their averages or anything. I'm not saying that. It wasn't a free-for-all. This was a low-scoring game, but I just thought this was a really bad performance by Georgia's offense and really kind of left the team hanging. And there was some questionable special teams plays as well. We saw Muse have some issues returning kicks and kind of set Georgia up in some bad situations on the field. Credit to Alabama special teams. I thought they won the day. Minus one punt return that Georgia had that was pretty good. I thought they won the day on special teams as well.
Yeah, and Bina James commented and said that Bama defense, and I completely agree.
They got a good defense. There's no doubt about it.
And they played really well. A lot of the pressure that Georgia faced in the backfield that Carson Beck faced came from coverage. Good coverage, and even
he
after
did hold the ball a little longer than what we're used to.
Yeah, and even after Kool-Aid McKinstry went out, Amos steps in and takes over, and had a pass deflection on the first play. So I thought that they were deep in the secondary, and that was important. And I think that one injury that doesn't get talked about in the game for Georgia is 12 for Georgia, Humphrey. Julian Humphrey. That's one that happened a few weeks ago. I think he broke his arm, and he was coming on, man. And they targeted 6 all game, Dalen Everett, and they exposed him. And Georgia didn't have an answer. They weren't deep enough at the end of the day. Nyland Green wasn't ready to go. He's in the transfer portal now. So, that can't happen. And at the end of the day, I thought that Alabama was a healthier, deeper roster than Georgia, and it showed.
I agree, and I have to say, both of these defenses played really well. Alabama's defense definitely played better, especially on third down. I thought Alabama just had some amazingly clutch third down stops against Georgia, and that was very, very impressive, getting behind the line of scrimmage. Thank you, Bina, for commenting, and we do appreciate you tuning into the First Long College Football Show. And anybody out there that's watching, please shoot us a comment. We'd love to read it on the show. We're going to keep it moving though, because we're going to get to some of the stuff that everybody wants to hear about.